Vera and I travelled to the rural Philippines earlier this year as part of the second summer cohort for Halad to Health. After this mission, we decided to stay with Halad to Health as operation team members. So if you're not joining us from the Philippines, you might be wondering what Halad means. Halad means an offering in the sign language. So we choose to offer the opportunity for good health. We are an international charity closing the gap in global health inequality through delivering free health education services in rural Philippines, which are fully funded by our educational GAMSAT and Med Interview services, which help students get into postgrad medicine. Any donations from events like this one tonight go straight to that cause. So thank you so much for coming together to learn and make a difference with us. As part of the mission, we saw firsthand and heard stories of young girls becoming mothers. In the delivery room, our team saw both deaths and births, and the midwives spoke of their own experiences with teenage pregnancy as a common thing in the hospitals. We met high school students, 2 of which are here tonight, or 1 is here and then 1 will be here in a pre-recorded video, who will later talk about their own personal experiences. Heshie and Charity will share their thoughts on teenage pregnancy and how it can impact the prospects of completing high school and further study. Tonight, we will also be talking to an Australian general practitioner, Dr. Rimma Medres. She will be discussing why teenage pregnancies can be so dangerous for both the mother and the child by first examining the anatomical basis. We will then have the opportunity to talk to a municipal health officer of LGU Maramag, Bukidnon. Dr. Revilla will share specific statistics and explain the local reality that teen parents face in the Philippines every single day.
Great, thank you for that, Kayla. During these talks, I just want to remind if anyone has any questions, please feel free to pop them into the chat box and we will address them at the very end during the Q&A session. We also have a hybrid of audiences today. Some of our audiences from Australia, but we also have many students from the Philippines. So ask that everyone keeps in mind and keeps their questions as respectful and considerate as possible. Perfect. And we would also like to remind everyone that what we're covering in today's session may be sensitive for some viewers. And if you need to take a step away to take a breath or a break, please don't hesitate to do so. Perfect. All right, so before we get into the discussion with our doctors, we will first introduce our topic and its importance to you all. So the Philippines has one of the highest teenage pregnancy rates in all of Southeast Asia. School-age girls between the ages of 15 to 19 make up 10% of the population of the Philippines, and 1 in every 10 of those girls has already given birth to a child. A few months before our mission, a girl aged 11 years old had already given birth to a child, and she was from the school that we attended to deliver our health education sessions. And to add to this, health professionals noted it was quite normal to have girls as young as 11 and 12 presenting and pregnant in their health clinics.
So we will now introduce 2 of our Filipino speakers, Heshie and Charity. Charity is also our co-host for tonight, and she will be chatting to Dr. Revilla later this evening and helping with translations if needed. So Charity, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Good day, everyone. I am Charity Banda, also a Halad to Health Philippines team member. I'm currently studying as a first-year nursing student at one of the schools Ate Michaela and Ate Vera visited earlier this year, which is Central Mindanao University.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. So now that the audience knows a bit more about you, Charity, would you like to share with us a bit more about what you've observed about teenage pregnancy, its stigma, and perhaps even if you have any stories you've heard about teenage mothers? So we'll start by asking you some questions, some specific questions. So the first one tonight is, what have you observed about teenage pregnancies here in Bukidnon?
First of all, thank you for this. Being able to speak to such a big audience is nerve-wracking, but with the topic we have now. It's really just close to my heart as I have had a personal glimpse of how the teenage pregnancies here in Bukidnon are rising every year. And 6 years in my own high school alone, I've witnessed over 5 teenage pregnancies, and the youngest one was just 15 or 16 years old. In Valencia alone, according to one of our OBGYNs, from January to August, we've had over 382 cases of teenage pregnancies.
All right, thank you for that answer, Charity. Next question. Have you got any stories that you've personally heard about teenage mothers?
For that, I can't particularly pinpoint any teenage story because most of these occurrences are hidden and kept silent at our school. And what normally happens is that we would just observe that a student is not going to school anymore, and then months after, they would just post on their social media like surprise for a baby shower celebration. Then we'd be left wondering how, when, and why everything happened. And although some of these students would continue going to school while being pregnant, they hide their baby bumps so we wouldn't notice, or at least we try not to notice it.
Thank you for that answer, Charity. It must be quite hard. Why do you think then that teenage mothers do these things, and what do you think the stigma around teenage pregnancy is, and how can you explain it in Bukidnon?
Yeah, I guess it's because people put so much shame in the situation they are in. People see teenage mothers as someone who is pitiful, irresponsible, hopeless, and should be excluded from the society. Meaning it's basically people, especially here in Bukidnon, saying that once you already have a baby, you have no future anymore. This, of course, is not true because I have friends and classmates who are already teenage mothers in college with me, and they're doing really fine. So that's prime evidence that social stigma around this topic should be stopped.
Lovely, thank you for that answer, Charity. So what do you think could be done to improve the current situation? And do you think there are any resources for young mothers?
To tell you all honestly, I for one am guilty of once thinking of those things that I just said, and even discourage some of the teenage mothers in you. However, as I grew mature, got educated, and even reflected on the lives of these teenage mothers, my eyes suddenly got open, and I took into heart the struggles they have as someone with a bigger responsibility than just a student or a daughter like me. So I extended my networks and found teenage clinics like ones from Maramag Bukidnon, Tambayan ng Kabataan, and learned that they give service to teenage mothers who are either ashamed or have no enough provision to go to hospitals. Being just exposed to these things, I had a sudden realization that, hey, instead of bringing these teenage mothers down, why don't we lift them up? And what these teenage mothers did was a bit irresponsible, yes. However, there is no point in dwelling over spilled milk. And the most important thing is that they learn their lesson. And we should be there to empower these women. They don't need our judgment, they need our strength. And we should especially educate the ones who are ignorant of the dangers and consequences of teenage pregnancy, especially here in Bukidnon, because some of them really don't know about these things. That's why we are fortunate and privileged to be able to take part and attend this online webinar and be more educated of this topic.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your answers, Charity, and for providing us with your insight and personal experiences. Excellent. We will now be watching a short pre-recorded video from our other student ambassador, Heshie, from the Philippines. Perfect. Thank you, Sarah.
I observe a lot of cases and victims here in Bukidnon. It's said that lack of access to useful information on the matter of sex could be blamed, as many of the youth in Region 10 has engaged in risky sex and has become pregnant before reaching the age of 20. Some of them are my friends, and I saw how they suffer the consequences and how they become independent enough to face the responsibilities being a young man, even though they did mistakes in their past, but still they can pursue their dreams by starting a new beginning of their life, and they are supposed to be to change the world, not changing diapers. First of all, thank you for this opportunity to share my experiences on teenage pregnancy. It is actually really personal for me, as I have witnessed with my own eyes the story of how my friend became a teenage mother at the age of 16 years old. She was my best friend, and since we were, no secrets were held back from the both of us. There was one time she suddenly told me that she and her boyfriend engaged in sexual activity, and knowing of the danger of teenage pregnancy, I felt angry and frustrated, so I gave her some advices to stop seeing her boyfriend and reminded her all the consequences that may arise if they will continue what they were doing. However, I didn't think she ever took any of my advices I gave, because she continued having sexual activities with her boyfriend, and it made due to her feeling so infatuated with him. A few months passed, and before her period, she suddenly got so dizzy. So she came up to me and told me she was pregnant. I didn't know what to do, as she cried so hard in my arms and regretted everything. But we both know it is already too late, and after that, her life changed and she faced the responsibilities of being a teenage mother at such a young age. In many communities, adolescent pregnancy, especially the unmarried teen pregnancies, carries a social stigma because most of their pregnancies are unwanted and unplanned in developing here in Bukidnon. Early pregnancies are commonly associated with poverty and lower educational levels. The teen's mother have more obstetric complications due to their underdeveloped pelvis, adverse childhood environmental, bad parenting, and lack of proper education and leading causes behind the teenage pregnancy. Media also have a major influence on early pregnancy. For most teenagers, the real consequences of having a child at such a young age are unknown. Teens need to be aware of harsh reality of raising a baby and the negative effect that an unplanned pregnancy can cause in both the mother and the child lives in order to prevent teenage pregnancy. Teenagers need to comprehensive understanding of abstinence, contraceptive techniques, and consequences.
Thank you so much for playing that video, Sarah. And I'll extend my thanks out to Heshie for giving those answers and sharing that information. It was quite personal. So now I'm going to introduce Dr. Rimma Medres, who is a Australian GP, as I mentioned before. She has practiced for 6 years and is currently based here in Melbourne, and one of her many specialisations is women's health. It is such an honour to have you here tonight, Dr. Medres, to talk about teenage pregnancy and the problems it poses, for both the mother and the child. While we ask Dr. Medres the questions, Charity will be translating some of the parts in Visayan for our Filipino audiences. Thank you so much, Charity. Okay, I'll just jump in and ask the first question. So, as a GP in Melbourne, Australia, do you believe that teenage pregnancy is common and or stigmatised here in Australia?
Hi, thanks for having me. In Australia, teenage pregnancy is common. It's common enough for our hospitals to run specific clinics for young mothers. The reason for the clinics is because we recognise that young mothers face a lot more challenges. They need physical and psychological and emotional support and a lot of education. And it is, you know, teenage pregnancy is stigmatized all over the world. Everywhere in the world, women have a, right age to have children and a wrong age to have children, and you will always, women can't do anything right by society wherever they live. But I think teenage mums face a lot more stigma because they lose all of their social supports as soon as they become pregnant. In a lot of places in the world, they lose their ability to gain education. So it really, really limits their future possibilities. Quite often they're left alone by their partner to do things on their own. And in some countries, in some parts of the world, they're, expelled from their family or their community. And so they find it really, really hard. So yeah, it's common and it's stigmatized all over the world.
Thank you for that answer, Dr. Medres. My question for you is, what do you think can be done to prevent teenage pregnancy in Australia?
I think teenage pregnancy has to, the only way to prevent it is education. We have to explain to young people that it takes more than just, it takes once to fall pregnant. You don't need to have lots of sex to get pregnant. Young mothers quite often don't know they're pregnant because when you first start getting your period is irregular for a few years, and so if you miss a month or two, you don't even notice. So it's very hard to be able to do any kind of natural contraceptive methods. So there are fertile periods in your cycle, and there are more fertile periods in your cycle and the less fertile periods in your cycle. And if you have a very regular cycle of 28 days from start to start, then your most fertile period is day 9 to 16. If you avoid intercourse at that time in particular, then you have a lower chance of getting pregnant. But the only thing that is 100% effective as a contraceptive is abstinence. Delaying starting having intercourse, having sex, till you're ready to be a parent is really the most ideal thing. And it's, it's important to be physically and emotionally ready to have a baby. Babies are great. It's just you need to be ready to be able to handle them. And the later you do it, the more resources you have around you, the more support you have around you, the better it is for you and for your baby. I think that's probably one of the, there are other forms of contraceptives. And if you do see the doctor, you will get, whatever is available in your area that is that you can do. But once again, everything has a failure rate. Even if we try and tie the tubes, and in some people, the body can still overcome it and you can still get pregnant. So the only thing that is 100% is abstinence.
Definitely. Thank you for that. So in terms of the anatomy and how young girls are compared to girls who are physically able, why is teenage pregnancy specifically such an issue for young mums?
Young mums so pregnancy is dangerous business in general, but young mothers who are still growing, they are physically not, their bones are not developed enough. So the head has to go through the pelvis. Pelvis has a gap for it. But if your pelvis hasn't grown enough, then no matter, then the baby will just get stuck. And that is one of the most common problems for teenage pregnancies, is that the baby just can't get out. So this increases the risk of needing help during delivery. So it increases the chance of a woman having to have a cesarean section. And with that, there's scarring that's left behind. You need longer time to recover after delivery. Any kind of operation carries risks in itself. teenage mothers in general are at a high risk of all complications. So develop all sorts of things during pregnancy. And once again, because they don't know they're pregnant, quite often for quite a while, they can delay seeing the doctor just to check for a checkup, and missing appointments or missing the doctor's appointments to be able to catch things early and address it increases the risks of things for developing during the pregnancy and after delivery. Quite often, because mums can't carry to term because of the size of their body, the pregnancy ends with a premature baby, and premature babies don't survive well. So this increases the risk of babies being born too early, too small, and consequently dying. If a baby gets stuck and there's no medical help because you're too far away from a hospital where they can do something about it, that increases the rate of babies dying again, and also increases complications for mum. So mum can die from that too. So overall, it's quite a dangerous business having a baby when you're a teenager. And then you have to think about all the resources you need once the baby's out. Establishing breastfeeding is also a very difficult thing to do. And you need a lot of help and guidance with that. And it's very, and if a woman is, if a young woman is isolated and doesn't know whom to ask, then she can't feed the baby properly. Overall, it's a very stressful situation.
Yeah, definitely. So following on from that, and I guess you definitely touched on a few of the aspects, but what do you think are the financial, social, and emotional or mental consequences of teenage pregnancy?
Well, a baby costs a lot of money to raise. It needs stuff. It needs papers, it needs clothes, it needs food, it needs toys, books, shoes, school fees, all sorts of things. And if you are a teenager and you don't have a trade or you haven't finished school, it's very difficult to provide for them, especially if you've been kicked out of home or out of your village or, and you don't have a partner around to support you. It's a very, very stressful time. If you finish school and you develop skills and you have the ability to earn some money, just makes your life a little bit easier for you to be able to afford all those things. Everybody wants to support their child, wants to provide the best for their child, wants their child to have the best, start in life. So starting on the back foot is always much more challenging. Postnatal depression is a real thing. It's a real thing all over the world. It's to do with multiple factors, and one of them is the hormones of pregnancy and breastfeeding. So, you give birth, there's lots of hormones floating around. You're breastfeeding, there's lots of hormones floating around, and they all affect your mood. And it can lead to depression, anxiety. And postnatal depression, anxiety is it's extremely common all over the world, in Australia too. On top of that, babies don't sleep as much as adults need sleep. They wake up every few hours. So you become really, it's exhausting. And everybody knows how you feel when you feel tired. You feel down. And all of those things contribute to a very high rate of postnatal depression. And then if you think about all the stresses that the young mother is facing alone, then altogether mental health conditions in teenagers who are pregnant unexpectedly are extremely high. And, it's a difficult thing to deal with.
Thank you for that answer, but 100%, so many consequences. Our next question is, so obviously we've already been talking a lot about the young mother, but what do you think are some consequences for the baby?
We've talked about the potential physical effects, but I guess in a lot of parts of the world, babies out of wedlock are frowned upon. Babies treated as a tainted person. They have a mark on them. They are stigmatized, and they didn't ask for that. They didn't ask to be born. They didn't ask to be treated like that. It's not fair for society to do this to them, but it does. And so, you know, it's a very long-standing stigma for the child. I guess the other aspect of this is that quite often the father is not in the picture, and so you have a single mum, and you know, babies need they need dads. They need dads around to provide a strong, you know, male role model. They need to, especially boys, they need to have, you know, the games that boys play and rough and tumble stuff for their development. And they need to have a male role model in their life. And so that's another thing that quite often is missing in these kind of situations.
Yes, definitely. It would be very hard, and it is true, like they didn't ask for that. As a mum yourself, what do you think makes a good mum? It's a hard question.
It is a really hard question. It's not a question that should be asked as a black and white, this is what you do. I think anybody who loves their child and wants to provide for their child and is consistently there for them, that's really the best thing you can do for a child. Everything else is just dressing, you know. You don't need a lot of money. You just need to feel like you can provide for the child, to give you self-confidence. Because when you feel more confident as an individual, you can be a better parent. Being a parent is one of the hardest things I've ever done. And, you know, I thought medicine was difficult. It's nothing compared to being a parent. And you want to have some life experience that you can then, you know, guide this young person through certain things that you've already lived through, so that you can support them through through their hardships and their hard times. But if you don't feel like you've had enough experience, or if you feel like you haven't seen the world enough or haven't lived long enough, then it really undermines your ability to feel like a good parent. But, you know, their children just need love and consistency, and they need you to be there for them. That's what makes a good mum.
Yeah, excellent answer. Thank you, Dr. Medres. Our next question is about STIs, sexually transmitted infections. Do you think that there's a stigma surrounding around them, and what do you think actually leads to the formation of these stigmas?
Well, stigma always comes from lack of knowledge, I think. You don't understand something, then you're much more likely to invent something in your head or follow something that somebody else, you heard somebody say or read, you know, some things that you read somewhere. So education is really the most important thing to try and destigmatize things. STIs are a real thing, you know. Sexually transmitted infections are transmitted during the act of intercourse, and if you get pregnant, then you're more likely to have had have been exposed to bodily fluids. But because of the stigma of it, because people are too scared to show a rash or to talk about, you know, something that's happening to them, like bleeding when they're not supposed to be bleeding, or discharge that wasn't happening before, people are scared. They're scared that the doctor is going to look at them and say, what have you been doing, and how dare you, and laugh at you, or go and tell everybody about it. I don't know what the laws are in other countries, but in Australia, there's a law of confidentiality, which means that anything you say to the doctor stays with the doctor. And if the doctor goes and tells somebody something, and you can sue them, and the doctor won't have any way of protecting themselves. So confidentiality is really, really important to doctors, because we want you to feel comfortable coming to tell us whatever is, you know, pimple you have on your bum or something that's happening to you, because we need to know all the information to be able to treat you properly. Sexually transmitted infections have a very long-lasting effect on people, psychologically and physically. And if they're not treated on time, it can have a lot of dire consequences. One of the most common infections is the human papillomavirus infection, or HPV, which causes little skin infections, but long-term in women, it can cause cancer of the cervix. Chlamydia is a very common sexually transmitted infection that is very easily treated with literally one course of antibiotics. But if it sits around, but in 50% of people, it gives no symptoms. And so you don't even know you have it. And if a woman has it and she doesn't know she has it, the infection can cause severe scarring in the fallopian tubes, which is where the egg travels through to get to the womb. And if the scarring is permanent, then she can't get pregnant afterwards. So, you know, if you are not sure of what is happening to you, just, you know, try and not think about what potentially a doctor could maybe say to you, because the good effects of seeing a doctor are so much more than the potential consequences of an infection long term.
Definitely. Thank you for that answer. So in terms of resources, what resources are available to women in Australia during pregnancy and after birth as well?
So GPs are perfectly placed for looking after women. We have what we call cradle to grave medicine. So we take care of everybody at any stage of their life. We are also the people who refer you to someone else. So if you need to know something, who to get information from or who to see, that's what we do. We specialize in knowing what's around. For teenage mothers, the hospitals here hold specific education groups and mothers groups. We have maternal health nurses who are placed in the community, who start seeing a baby day 2 after discharge from hospital until they're about 4. And mum and dad and the baby go in regularly to get the baby weighed and measured and to answer any questions that they have about any problems that they might be having, either with the baby or between themselves or within themselves. And then there are support groups that are run by the maternal health nurse, I work at a university, so we have a university support group. There are a lot of things in the community that are available to young mums, because we know how hard it is to be a parent, and we also know how hard it is to be a young mum. Because, you know, when you become a mum and all your friends are going out to parties and you can't because you've got a baby to take care of, you lose your friends really quickly. And, you know, when your day is spent looking after a baby who's been crying all night, or, you know, they vomited or whatever, or they're not feeding, or you're worried about them, your friends don't have a lot of understanding of your situation because they're just not in that headspace. So that's why we try and provide as much support as we can to the mums and educate them as much as we can.
Perfect. Thank you for that answer and for the answers to all the questions. And that pretty much concludes our questions. So just to end this part of our event, do you have any final thoughts or messages that you'd like to send out to young girls out there, or boys?
I think it's really important as a woman to understand that you always have a choice. You have a choice as to who touches you, when they touch you, and how they touch you. Doesn't matter whether you've been going out with somebody for 3 minutes or you've been married to them for 50 years. If you don't think it's the right thing for you right now, you can say no. I think it's really important to understand that, you know, we all want to show our partners that we care for them and we love them. And sometimes we get this notion that we have to have sex with them in order to prove ourselves to them. I'd like to challenge that and say that a good man will wait for when you're ready. You know, if you're a boy and, you know, you're sitting here listening to this, think about how you would like your sister to be treated, or how you'd like your cousin to be treated. And what would you do if somebody was forcing themselves or encouraging somebody to do something that they didn't want to do? And wanting is, you know, there's a physiological part of it, there's an attraction part of it, there's you feel like you want to know what it's all about. But I guess if you have a goal to, you know, be the best you, and that means you want to finish your school, you want to set yourself up, then you need to take this into consideration when you make this decision, whether you want to pursue this this relationship and how far you should go within it. You should always have the right to say no. And if you're in a situation where you feel you don't have the right or the ability to say no, then you need to try and avoid situations where you would be alone with that person. Whether that means you meet them up outside somewhere surrounded by other people, or you bring a friend, or you're always unavailable, eventually they'll get the message. You don't have to be rude, you don't have to be mean, you don't have to do anything, but there are ways of keeping yourself safe, and trying to find ways to keep safe and finding allies is really, really important. If you take all of those things into consideration and just decide that you don't want to have sex, you always have the right to say no. And that way, you won't end up pregnant. Pregnancy is wonderful. Not most of the time, you have healthy mom, healthy baby. But when you run into troubles, it can be devastating and life-threatening. And you want to have as many people supporting you when you are ready to have a baby as you possibly can.
Excellent.
As they say in English, it takes 2 people to make it and a village to raise it. So just keep that in mind when you are faced with that decision.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for answering our questions, Dr. Medres, and for coming today and providing us with all of your insight. Next, I'm just going to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Rivilla. So, Dr. Rivilla is a municipal health officer of LGU Maramag Bukidnon, and as a result has observed a lot about teenage pregnancy in the Philippines and specifically in Bukidnon. We will have Charity introduce Dr. Rivilla to us in more detail and ask her some questions today. But thank you so much for being here tonight, Dr. Rivilla. We really appreciate it.
So good evening again, everyone. Doctor, as what is in your screens right now, Dr. Revilla is the Municipal Health Officer of LGU Maramag Bukidnon and is working together at the Tumbayan ng Kabataan Maramag. She handles clinics there regarding teenage pregnancies, and tonight she will be telling us statistics, programs, and how teenage pregnancy is here in Bukidnon as a health professional. So the first question, Dr. Revilla, what are the local statistics of teenage pregnancy in Bukidnon and the mortality rate for both child and mother?
Good evening, Ma'am Charity. It is my pleasure to be joining you here in this meeting. So the teenage pregnancy in Bukidnon, in 2017, that's 15%, then 2018, it's 15% again, and another, in 2019, 15%. There is no decrease of the teenage pregnancy rate here in the Philippines. So that for the mortality rate, we don't have any statistics regarding that, but for the neonatal mortality rate, we have 26%, 26.9% for 10 to 14 years old, and 133% for the 2019 in 15 to 19 years old.
Well, that's some statistics. Even I from Kidnon don't even know that. So thank you very much, Dr. Revilla. And the second question would be, doing consultations of these teenage mothers, what are the most common problems they encounter during and after pregnancy?
The common problems that they are encountering is, number one, the disclosure of their pregnancy, so that it takes time for them to disclose, and that the prenatal checkup will be done late. It should have been on the first trimester that they should undergo prenatal checkups, but because of the fear of their telling to their parents, so that they delay. Usually they did the they did the disclosure on the second trimester, that is on the 4th to the 6th month. So there will be late prenatal checkups and late also the giving of vitamin supplementation to this teenage mother. So, and also there is a fear of discrimination from friends, neighbors, and the community as well. Some parents even hide the pregnancy of their children for fear of discrimination again. Another is, uh, upon the delivery, the caring of the babies are now being taken care of by the grandparents because they see to it that they will be the one handling these babies, because how can a teenage mom also caring, she's still a child, caring for another child. So the one who will be caring now for these children are the parents, the grandparents themselves. So another problem is the use of family planning method. So we usually ask them to have a family planning method for them to finish studies, because some fear that having family planning method would endanger their lives. And another thing, the problem is being a child herself put her at risk of being in having this pregnancy.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Rivera. The third question will be, are there any programs that the government is currently working on or has been implementing to mitigate the rising cases of the teenage pregnancy in the province?
Okay. The we are implementing some programs to mitigate the teenage pregnancy. Actually, it was in 2015 that we did have the Tambayan ng Kabataan. Why? Because during our municipal local government project, the teenage pregnancy rate that is as of us is to be at least 4%. But unfortunately, that is not happening still now, no, because of the teenage pregnancy rate that we are having 15%. So the ordinances that that was passed are to the making of the adolescent-friendly facilities. In Bukidnon, we have nine who already have this ordinance on the adolescent friendly facility. And you know what, in Maramag, we are one as adjudged as the best performing center, the Tambayan ng Kabataan or the 10 Center, and we do have also adolescent and youth welfare clinic or the 10 clinic, so that the consultation for teenage mother and teenage children can be done in the 10 clinic. So another is the collaboration between the Department of Health and the Population Commission regarding the Republic Act 10354, or the Responsible Parenthood and Reproductive Health, or the RPRH law of 2012. And this is a legislation that guarantees and enables measures for the sexual and reproductive rights of women, men, young people, and families through comprehensive and accessible reproductive health, care, and services. So another is the establishment of information and service delivery networks spearheaded by Population Commission Region 10. Si Dr. Jerry Gopit ang director. So, what is ISDN? It is a coordinated meeting between the Department of Education, Commission on Higher Education, the Philippine National Police, the Philippine Army, the Department of Health, Population Commission, the Municipal Social Welfare and Development, and the civil service organizations like Eagles Club, religious sectors and the media. And another is the creation of the local youth development office. So that are some of the programs that the government is working on, and we are very pleased to have this here in Bukidnon.
Thank you, Dr. Revilla. And the last question would be: aside from teenage pregnancies, what are other reproductive health problems that young people encounter, especially in Bukidnon?
As to that question, we have the problem of unplanned pregnancy due to early sexual encounter. Another problem is the sexually transmitted illnesses, HIV, human immune virus, and acquired AIDS, immune deficiency syndrome problem, because again, they are not following the delay the sexual debut. So they should have to delay the sexual debut so that they cannot get STI, HIV, and AIDS. But fortunately, here in Maramag, we already have at HIV AIDS primary integration of services for this problem to be addressed. Another is the issue on human sexuality, so that we ensure that we are following SUGI, like we must see to it that sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression must be taken into consideration also, because some teenagers are telling me, Doc, I am a woman, but I'm trapped in a man's body. Or I am a man, but I'm trapped in a woman's body. So that's it. And here the problem is the issue on the low level of sexual education. No, because usually because of our religiosity, talking about sexuality and the sexual education is like a taboo to some people. Another is the use of the reproductive health services, because we usually tell the patients or these teenage moms to have family planning services for them to finish at least their education. Because if you will not finish your education, that is tantamount to a bleak future for these children, because they cannot find any ways to have a job, because job entails the the finishing of a their studies.
Thank you for sharing all those information with us, Dr. Revilla. We are so privileged to have you tonight and talk about these things. And we will now go to our question and answer time.
Yes, so thank you so much, Dr. Revilla and Charity. That was amazing and really great information to be shared tonight. So as Charity mentioned, we will go on to Q&A at the moment. Vera will read out the questions, and Charity will also translate any questions in Visaya to English for our speakers. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat now and we'll address them. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for that, Michaela. So our first question is to Dr. Revilla. So leading on from everything that you've talked about, what are your next steps moving forward in helping young mothers and children around the world understand more about this issue of teenage pregnancy?
Actually, the making of the Adolescent Youth and Development Program in this municipality, as well in other places in the Philippines, we are now addressing this through education. through meetings with children, or in high school curriculum, in high school, and maybe now because of the advent now of COVID pandemic, we will be making a move for this sexual education through a webinar or webinar. And actually, the Tambayan ng Kabataan has already evolved. It's no longer we add another programs to help the youth for them to keep busy. Like for example, we have one school that is at Central Mindanao University Laboratory High School, who are engaged in filmmaking. Another are also in programs on against drug abuse, because most of the time those people who are into drugs can make sexual encounter as one of the avenues for them to be maybe free, to be happy. Another is we partner with religious sectors and also other civil organizations, like religious organization, for us for them to help us in the bid of decreasing that teenage pregnancy in these children.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Revelia. Dr. Medres, the next question's for you. So what do you think is the difference in the amount of risk involved in childbirth by teenage mothers versus by adult mothers?
I don't know the statistics because I don't deliver babies.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I'm just going to say that the risks are higher the younger you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, all right, cool. Next question I'll direct to Dr. Revelia. So if the issues faced during teenage pregnancy are not addressed, what would be the potential impact on the adolescent's future mental health and well-being?
There will be no issue on depression, as well as most of the time, if you are in early in early pregnancies, then the problem on like your partner, there's the issue of family, like the family that will be in broken marriages, and also the issue now of education will be at risk, because most of the time they will no longer go back to their education.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. Okay, next question will be directed to Dr. Medres. So someone asked, is it believed that the age from which teens can fall pregnant is lowering due to puberty commencing earlier than it has in the past?
So basically, if you have a period, you can get pregnant. Because if you are menstruating, that means that you're ovulating. It's just basic anatomy. Yes, as nutrition's improved all over the world, kids are growing faster, so they're a bit taller and a bit bigger, and so they're developing faster. And yes, puberty is hitting all over the world. It's hitting earlier, and so therefore the ability to get pregnant is also starting earlier. But yeah, as long as you have a period, you can be pregnant. The biggest problem is that, as I said before, that in the first 2 or 3 years of your menstruation, your periods are irregular. So you just don't know when you're scared, when you can get pregnant, or when you do get pregnant. But it's a problem all over it's just a problem because then you miss it, you don't know you've missed it, and then, as Dr. Revilla said, you just don't come on time and you miss all these opportunities for early intervention.
Amazing, thank you. I've got a couple other questions for you as well, Dr. Medres. So the next one is, what resources are available in Australia for people with teenage pregnancies and also STI advocacy?
That's a really big question. I know that we start sexual education in primary school in Australia, and it goes on throughout the whole of it starts in grade 5, maybe even 4. I'm trying to remember when my son did it.
Grade 5's correct. Yes.
I think grade 5, and it carries on yearly throughout your whole school life. We have hospitals run, teenage pregnancy clinics. We have anywhere you go where there's young people involved, there's access to contraceptive advice, barrier methods advice, doctor's advice. We have online resources where when people can go anonymously and ask questions. We try and facilitate information as much as we possibly can through government-funded and local and federal government-funded programs through all stages of schooling. And the university, I work at a university, so we spend a lot of time advocating for, educating about when to see a doctor, how to prevent STIs, how to minimize your risk, and then where and how to seek help if you are pregnant.
Great, thank you. Okay, so Dr. Revillia, the next question is for you. So someone has asked, what can I do or say if one of my school friends is sexually active? She is only 13.
Actually, with the advent now of the Tambayan ng Kabataan or the Teen Center, which is now handled by the AYDO, Adolescent Youth Development Officer, Sheila Amatadi, then they will be discussed, or the issue on their sexuality will be addressed, like they will be conducting meetings and then follow up of these children so that they will no longer go into their sexual habits. No, because now, because of the increasing number of cases of STI and HIV that are now encountered here, even in this municipality, then they should be advised. No, then we merged with the Samguniang Kabataan, and the school also will be tapped so that this can be addressed.
All right, thank you for your answer to that, Dr. Revillia. Dr. Medres, someone has asked, how can I speak about sexual health and relationships with my parents when it's such a taboo and uncomfortable topic to discuss?
You could write a book about that answer. Look, we as human beings always there's a lot of uncomfortable topics to be had. And I guess honesty is always the best answer to these kind of questions. I would hope that your parents, would respond in a way that will make it easier for you to talk to them about it. I guess every parent has their fears and their own stigmas inside their head, and you have to give them a chance to have their freak out. And then once they've come down, hopefully for you guys to have an open discussion. I would hope my children would be able to come to me to talk to me about uncomfortable things, because I would like to be their resource and their source of information rather than some random person on the internet or on the street or their friend who is, my kids are 11 and 9. I can only imagine what information they have. There are a lot of uncomfortable topics, and I would hope that, you would be able to discuss something with them, start general and then go specific, get the feel of the land, as they say, first, see how they respond, and then I don't think that I can tell anybody how to talk to their parents because I don't know them or their parents. But I guess the more open and honest you have a discussion, the more likely you are to get the support that you need.
Amazing. So Dr. Medres, I have another question for you. If you could give one piece of advice, the biggest piece of advice to young girls in this topic, what would you say?
I think I think there's a lot of pressure on young women always, no matter, not even young, on women. You have to always perform in some way. There's a lot of expectations from women. Women have a lot of expectations from themselves. And then those kind of extend into what they think others expect from them. And those expectations drive your decision making. It takes a very strong person to withstand peer pressure. It takes a very strong person to be determined to reach their goals. It takes a lot of guts to say no to somebody for multiple reasons. But I guess that's my main question is get all the information you can about things that you're, making a decision about. And then if you still not sure that it's a good idea, then just say no. It's really, really important because it will change the course of your life. It might not change the course of others' lives as much as it would change the course of your life. So I think for me, it would probably be think about the decision that you're making. Don't make it rashly and don't be afraid to say no.
Excellent advice. Thank you. I'm sure the person who asked that question will be really thankful that you answered that way. All right. Now, so if we could just go to the next slide. That pretty much wraps up the end of our webinar. And here are the links to some resources that we mentioned during our event and to some others that we have. So these are the resources from Halad. We have our open classroom series that takes place every single week. And starting from this week, we have our teenage pregnancy theme going on. So here, shout out to Emma. Emma's talking about puberty in that clip, and we will also be doing some live stream videos on Facebook as well. We also have our Halad Professionals Week as well. Day 4 and Day 5 cover the stigma of STDs as well as frequently asked questions on teenage pregnancy. So yeah, we'd love for you to give us a follow or a like on Halad to Health Philippines on Facebook. And on the next page, we should have the resources for Philippines. Yeah, so we have Save the Children, Philippines, the Commission on Population Development, or POPCOM, as well as the Government Helpline for Young People. And the last page should be the resources for Australia. Yeah, so of course, if you're from Victoria, we've got Family Planning Victoria, as well as Marie Stopes and Jean Hales. But yeah, that pretty much concludes our webinar tonight. We'd love to thank our speakers for tonight, Dr. Rimma Medres, Dr. Evangeline Revilla, and our amazing Philippines team members, Charity and Heshie. Thank you so much for giving up your night to talk to us about such an important issue. And a really underrepresented issue at that. And we'd also like to extend our thanks to Sarah, who's been on tech support all night. Thank you for facilitating such a smooth transition from one thing to another, as well as all our other Halad team members for always showing their support. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. We really hope that you're able to get something out of it. And if you have any other queries or concerns, please feel free to reach out to us at info@halad.org.
Thanks so much, everyone. Really, really appreciate you coming and really, really appreciate our speakers as well. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Monique.